Welcome to the Dome Discussions Podcast.
Right.
Your top source for all things New Orleans Saints. Powered by four voices who live and breathe black and gold.
Touchdown.
Every hit, every play,
Welcome to the NFL.
every moment. We've got it covered.
Let's go. Let's go.
All right, what's going on, Who Dat Nation? Welcome to the Dome Discussions Podcast with Be in the Know Network. I'm Kyle Besson with Athlon Sports and Canal Street Chronicles.
I'm Nick Jennings with Canal Street Chronicles.
I'm Caleb Yacarino with Canal Street Chronicles.
I'm Drew Collins with Who Dat Dish.
All right, before we actually get into any podcasting, we actually want to do a brief explanation of who we are. You know, since this is episode 1, we really want to introduce ourselves, and this is going to be learning time to do this. Episode 2 and everything is going to be all sports. I started with Canal Street Chronicles in 2023, actually. Before that, I just ran an Instagram page called 504.Saints, where I posted about the Saints for 7 years. I've been a Saints fan my whole life, even though my dad was in the military. My family's all from New Orleans. I've lived New Orleans basically my whole life, and I've just grown up a Saints fan.
I'm Nick Jennings. I'm an Appalachian State journalism major. I plan on moving to New Orleans actually after I finish there, so I'm looking forward to that. I've been a Saints fan my whole life. Fell in love with them after the Super Bowl. That whole year was special to me. That was kind of when I really indulged myself into the sports world and started my whole journey. So you can find me on Canal Street Chronicles, like I said. You can also find me on the Jordy Holtberg Show on Wednesday mornings to catch up on all things Saints football.
Yeah, as I said, my name's Caleb. I also write for Canal Street Chronicles. I'm originally from New Jersey, but I currently go to LSU. I kind of became a Saints fan really randomly. In New Jersey, a lot of football fans have all different types of teams. No one had the Saints, so I decided to choose the Saints. And then when I started visiting New Orleans, for example, I fell in love with the city, and I just loved it from there. And then with Canal Street Chronicles, it kind of happened randomly where I'm a psych major. That's what I thought I was going to do. And I randomly saw a opening there, reached out, and now we're here. So, yeah.
I'm Drew. I'm a sports media major at the University of Kansas. Grew up in a small town in Nebraska, so there really are no professional teams. So I fell in love with the Saints in 3rd grade. Always wanted to write for them, knew I loved writing. So 18th birthday, applied for Who Dat Dish, got on it, and I've been writing ever since.
That's awesome. We are all different states, man. It's like absolutely nobody's in the same area. I'd love to meet up eventually. All right. Before we get into our position battles and everything that we want to talk about today, we feel it's important to touch on the Derek Carr saga. We had 2 years of Derek Carr. Loved him, hate him, however you felt. We had the 2 years with him, and to start with it, I'll kind of start how I felt. When we signed Derek Carr, I'm not going to tell you I was through the roof or hated the signing. I thought we were going to get Derek Carr. I mean, I'd be fair with you. I thought we were going to get pretty all right quarterback play. No one that's going to bring us to the next level. Maybe somebody who brings us to the Super Bowl. Was an upgrade over Andy Dalton? 100%. I think Derek Carr can do things that Andy Dalton can't do. That's when you get value, though, right? You're paying Andy Dalton. I can't remember Andy Dalton's contract, but it's not nearly what you're paying Derek Carr. And how much better is Derek Carr than Andy Dalton to value this? Not a lot. I didn't hate Derek Carr through the play. You know, you hated to see him yell at Chris Olave, Eric McCoy. You hated to see that the leadership wasn't what you thought you were getting. Derek Carr presents him as a God-fearing man. You know, you really thought he would have been here and been the guy that brings his team upright. And when he retired, announced his retirement, a lot of Saints players reached out or posted in the story, you know, thanking him. So there's obviously a lot more that goes behind the scenes. But for the play and on the field, I don't think Derek Carr ever lived up to his money. You know, you gave him quite a bit of money, and then you guaranteed him $40 million in the offseason before he retired, which was a big thing. But just to kind of give my opinion on Derek Carr's saga, I never hated Derek Carr, but you definitely start to get some bad taste in your mouth after the terrible events that happened on January 1st, and Derek Carr was nowhere to be seen to say anything. During the Super Bowl, the biggest thing that happened in the city in a while that was wildly successful, and Derek Carr was nowhere to be seen when Spencer Rattler was going around. And Spencer Rattler, if you would have asked me in February, was QB1 then. Derek Carr was off the team in February when the Super Bowl happened. And then obviously you had the bad contract talks, talking to other teams, which we don't know if that's 100% confirmed or not. It's kind of a rumor right now, but the Derek Carr saga was definitely a failure in New Orleans. The rebuild should have started then, and it was a tough thing to happen in New Orleans.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It was kind of hard to not be bought in when you saw how excited Michael Thomas was when he was advocating for Derek Carr, and how bought in everybody was when the signing actually happened. Like you said, there were some accountability issues there that really rubbed people the wrong way. Never truly embraced the city. When it regards to his injury, actually, Mike Garofalo of NFL Network said that even if he had injections, had undergone rehab, he still would only be up to about 75%. Couldn't really throw 20 to 25 yards. So retirement, even though it was never a thought in my mind to be on the table throughout the entire offseason, I'm sure it wasn't new to Derek Carr or the Saints. I'm sure that this was in talks throughout the whole offseason. He was in talks with Mickey Loomis throughout the entire offseason. Never met face to face with Kellen Moore. Only visited the facility 2 times for doctor's visits. Just really bought out, moved his family right back out to Fresno right after the season. It was time for a split. I'm really excited for this quarterback battle. It's a new era of Saints football that's long overdue.
I think my biggest issue with the Derek Carr era, really, he always said the same sentiment that we always heard of: if you love the city, if you love the fans, they'll love you back. But it was kind of a situation of show don't tell, where he would always say it, but he wouldn't. I don't think he's ever shown it. If you could, I mean, pick out him going to Chipotle right away, which is always the joke about it. But even on on the field, it was there. It always felt like the chemistry was a little off with the coaching staff, with the players. Even if it might have been kumbaya at certain points, it just never felt like it was always a cohesive unit, and there was always issues. And giving him the benefit of the doubt for year one was always kind of fine, because year one with a new staff, new team, whole new franchise after being with the Raiders for your whole career, that's okay. And with Pete Carmichael's offense being very slow, and it's just being an issue, I get that. But the second year, there was still those chemistry issues that you kind of wanted to be fixed. None of it was fixed, and now we're here.
Outside of the first 2 games, Derek Carr really never got his footing. I mean, first 2 games, you thought Super Bowl contenders, all that, and then slowed down a lot. Derek Carr and Olave never really could connect. The offense seems like kind of sluggish and never really could get to its top form. Kind of obvious they need to split. It's unfortunate, but wish him the best in his retirement.
All right, and I want to say there's a lot of rumors about the Derek Carr thing that it's all rumors, and we're gonna take it like that. The flirting with other teams, everything like that. It's rumors, and we won't go off of that. Like I said, we are all with Canal Street Chronicles, Who Dat Dish, everything like that. It's hard to go off of rumors, tweets, things like this. But I do want to bring up the retirement in whole. So the rumor that Derek Carr retired because he suffered an injury that was non-football based that would have breached his contract. I wanted to bring it up in sense of Derek Carr's retirement. We're going to speak on is a huge benefit for the Saints. Clears around $30 million in cap space. Derek Carr still gets to keep about $10 million of it, and it's going to open up a lot of big moves for the Saints going forwards. I just kind of wanted to see your guys' point on him retiring and what you guys think the Saints could do with this money.
Yeah, I definitely think that $30 million is, I mean, it's huge for the Saints. They haven't had this relief in years. 2026, they'll finally be back on the right side of the cap. I don't know if that injury occurred in the game that he did say it occurred, and he said it occurred in Week 14's match against the Giants last season, where he injured his left wrist. That doesn't really make too much sense if you watch the playback, but I'll leave that there. But then again, NFL players don't typically walk away from $30 million. Usually they do it when they fear they can lose it all. There was a physical at the end of the season last year where there was no shoulder injury on the report, and he did go on a ski trip this offseason. So that's definitely speculation there. You can definitely see maybe he did suffer a non-football injury that he's trying to save face here. You never know. This is a really tricky situation, but it did benefit the Saints for sure.
And I think in regards to the money, they could go out and, I mean, I've heard people say trade for Micah Parsons, which obviously I think that's a little bit of a big step. But I
Right.
would love for them to go after Asante Samuel Jr. I mean, it's the most basic choice right there. And you just know that he fits with Brandon Staley, played his best football under Brandon Staley, had his best tackling, which is one of his biggest issues. And it just makes too much sense. Plus, with the injury concerns, this could be a Chase Young type deal from last offseason, and kind of a win-win situation. And then going back to the Derek Carr retirement situation a little bit more, I think it was a situation where it was both parties met with each other and said, look, we don't, if this injury did happen outside of football and the Saints can try to recoup all the money, they don't want to go into a quote unquote legal battle or a battle for a longer period of time and that to just be drawn out where the money's just in limbo. And also, Derek Carr wouldn't want to deal with that because he would want at least some of his money. So I think they came to that conclusion. But the fact that that conclusion even happened is crazy in my mind.
I couldn't agree with you more about the cap space. I feel like Asante Samuel, he's a great player at a position of need where you don't have a lot of depth. Getting him would be a huge acquisition. And you don't even have to spend all the money on him. If you really want, you could get Keenan Allen, you could get someone, a backup quarterback, a veteran. But I don't necessarily think you need to do that. I think it's completely fine that you roll over the money into future years. They've been trying to do that recently. They're not spending a ton in free agency these past few years. I think this will just fast track that kind of plan they have.
And they will
Right, and
still
I think
have
a lot
to
of
deal with. Oh, you go now.
I think a lot of people are actually thinking now that this $30 million is available and Trey Hendrickson rumors are going around. There's been a lot of talk about that reunion going on. I don't know if that's in the best of interest for New Orleans when it comes to future cap. He's over 30 years old. But yeah, that's something I definitely wanted to touch on since it's been going around.
No, that would
I'd
definitely
love
be
to see
fun.
that, but
That would definitely
love
be
to
fun.
see.
I
I
think
just
it was.
don't.
Yeah, it's risky. It's a risky one. It's just
Yeah.
because where the team is. It's exactly like the Micah Parsons thing I was talking about. But I was also saying that just you also have to deal with the Derek Carr contract next year still. It's not like it's off the books. So keeping as much money as possible, dealing with next year. This team isn't going to be competing. I would love for them to be competing. They're not going to be competing. So have as much money as possible for next year. And again, Asante Samuel Jr. is a little bit different just because he's still young. Prove it deal. If he loves the organization and thinks he wants to stay, kind of like what Chase Young had, then we could resign him next year. But I would advise the Saints to just keep their money, basically.
Yeah, and I did the piece on Asante Samuel recently, and his decision won't come until after June. He's pending a physical and a surgery, I believe. And he had surgery. Physicals need to be done, and he's gonna be looked at with a specialist come sometime June. So clearly, the Saints could probably get a good deal there. He's a young player, and he was a pretty good player as well. But coming off an injury that you need to be checked up on before getting a contract, he's probably going to heat up though. Bidding war is probably going to happen. The Saints going to have to compete in there, and they're going to have to figure out how much they want Asante Samuel.
Yeah, like Caleb said, this really could be like the Chase Young signing last year, coming off neck surgery, prove it deal. Really could be ideal.
And you can see how that Chase Young deal worked out for the Saints because they obviously liked him enough to almost give him another betting deal. They're betting on him now. The first year was a prove it deal. They liked him enough, and some would say they overpaid him to secure him for the next few years, and they must have liked him enough. All right.
I don't mind the price
Absolutely.
tag on him. People say 5.5 sacks isn't enough money for that. But if you look into it, he had, I believe it was 66 pressures or somewhere around that, which is like 15th in the
Mhm.
league. I feel like that's a good production. He just needs to convert them to sacks, which I think he can
And I
do.
think his pressure rate on PFF, if I'm not mistaken, or on something it was like top 5 pressure
Yep.
rate. It was
Yeah, something around that,
I think it was that stat. Yeah, I mean he just needs to turn into sacks,
Finish
and
play.
we'd be having a whole nother story. And this Saints defense would look a lot better because if Chase Young can get around 8 sacks, I'm ecstatic next season.
Right, and absolutely, and you got to think with the development of Brian Brzee too. If you can pair that with Chase Young breaking out finally, I think the defensive line could really be revitalized. Excuse me.
All right, and kind of going into what we're talking about, our position battles here. I want to bring up our position battles. There's a lot of position battles that we're looking forward to. By the time this episode goes up, tomorrow would be the start of OTAs. We're going to see a little bit of that, non-contact, but we're going to see a little bit of that and where these position battles start. I'm going to start with you, actually, Nick. What position battle are you looking forward to?
Well, actually, I'm looking at special teams. Blake Groupie versus Charlie Smith. I think that one's kind of been swept under the rug a little bit. Charlie Smith, second-year kicker out of Newry, Ireland, was an international pathway player last year. Saints love what they saw from him. He has a monster leg. Actually went viral a couple times last season for kicking like 60+ yards and immense win. It was crazy, but yeah, he showed he was really good in training camp last season. The Saints did ultimately stick with Groupie last year because they were uncertain about his ability to consistently kick from short ranges. Obviously, his leg strength is not a question, but the Saints felt that they would be kicking in closer ranges more last year, so that's why they went with Groupie. But look, Groupie has also been really good for the Saints, and I don't think he gets enough credit. He's at 5'7", and he's still gone 6 of 9 from 50 to 59 yards on kicks in 2023, and 6 of 8 from 50 to 59-yard kicks in 2024. He's been really consistent for New Orleans and has really been a nice successor to Will Lutz, who is actually one of the better kickers in franchise history.
100%. One thing that with Groupie that I've always it doesn't seem like they trusted him as much. I'll say that. There's times where you think they would have elected to go for the field goal and they haven't, but Groupie has done a lot more than fans will give him credit for. I would say that. But his misses have been in crucial times. But that is definitely a position battle. Right. I'm excited to see Charlie Smith. I think we're going to see him more in the preseason. The Saints obviously liked him enough to keep him around.
Right. I think he has a genuine shot if he has a good preseason.
All right. And Caleb, what position battle are you looking forward to in the season?
Yeah, I'm focusing on the offensive line. I mean, what Saints invested a first-round pick into a tackle with Kelvin Banks, or guard, as we know. And I think this is going to be kind of a 2-for-1. So I'm going to focus on the right tackle first. This could be somebody say Fuaga or Kelvin Banks, depending on which side the Saints want, against Trevor Penning. Because as we know, Trevor Penning's fifth-year option was not picked up. His future with the team's very uncertain right now. So seeing what the Saints can do this year, because you're kind of weighing, okay, do you think Trevor Penning can be a actual tackle in this league, solid in both pass protection and run blocking? As we know, run blocking he's better at, but pass protection is going to be the important one. So really weighing that option and seeing if one of the other tackles they're better at that side no matter what. Once we get that conclusion, then we could go to left guard. If Penning is taken out of that tackle spot, which I do think he should be, and I think it should be Fuaga back to his college spot, stick to what the players know, I would say Trevor Penning against Dylan Raduns at left guard, because you need to at least see if you have anything in Penning. Because if he can compete at left guard, kind of like what the Eagles did with Mekhi Becton, then that's going to be huge. He's going to be on a smaller contract if you want to re-sign him. He still might be a little unproven, and then you could just bring him back. And then if he's good, you have a very good offensive line. This is a way better offensive line than last year, just with Kelvin Banks there. And then with Dylan Raduns, if he wins, I do think he was his position was a little unfair in Tennessee. He had to deal with not great tackle play for a long time. So that it's kind of hard for a guard to really recover there. And I do think he will be a fine starting left guard, but just having Penning compete there is really important. I also think that if Penning does stick at right tackle, then Kelvin Banks has to be left guard. He has to be, because he needs to be on the field no matter what.
Yeah, and one thing I think you didn't say, but you said the Saints offensive line is talented. It's very talented. There's 4 first-round picks and a second-round pick in Eric McCoy, who's probably the Saints' best offensive lineman. At least most proven is Eric McCoy is your second-round pick, and he's surrounded by 4 first-round picks. And Raduns is also a second-round pick. Now, the Saints didn't use a second-round pick on him, but these guys are all heavily drafted and obviously showed something eventually. It's going to be awesome to see what rotation, and it's probably going to be a little bit of a carousel going into. We're going to probably see a different formations, and the Saints are going to really see what works best for them.
Yeah, I don't think we get an answer until week 1. I think we're going to obviously start hearing things during training camp and OTAs, and then we're going to start to hear things or start to actually see things during preseason. But I don't think we're going to get an answer until last minute, kind of with like same thing with the quarterback or other position battles, because of just this team is so. A lot of the players are very, very similar talent, and it might just be you go with the younger one, but we'll see.
Yeah, adding to that, actually, Kellen Moore recently said that Kelvin Banks has gotten work at left guard, left tackle, and right tackle throughout rookie minicamp, and that right now they're just going through the process, and they'll start narrowing it down as the process goes on. And going back to what Kyle said, there are four first-round picks on the offensive line, but 3 of those guys you have moved to a different position. So I don't agree with the strategy of keep drafting offensive linemen in the first round if you're just going to move them and turn them into a project. Grab a guy that you know can play. You've got 2 guys that were amazing on the bookends in Fuaga and Banks in college, both on their respective sides, which would work perfectly for New Orleans if they decided to go that way.
All right, that's awesome. Drew, what is the position battle that you are looking forward to this season?
I'm going to be looking at the backup running backs. Alvin Kamara, clear-cut running back 1. No one's questioning that. But for backup, I mean, obviously you have Kendre Miller. Immense talents. He just hasn't been able to stay healthy. He's only played 14 games in the past 2 years. If he can stay healthy, that's great. But, I mean, you can't bank on that anymore. I drafted Devin Neal in the 6th round. High character, ultra productive guy at Kansas. 4,343 rushing yards in his career. All-time leading rusher, all-time leading touchdowns. He's done everything for Kansas, and I think he's going to be able to, not to that level, but be able to contribute a big part in the Saints offense. The final player, I don't think he'll win it, but I think it's at least worth mentioning him, is Marcus Yarns, the undrafted free agent out of Delaware. In 9 games last year, he had 844 yards. He puts out good film. It's just, can he make that transition from a smaller school in Delaware to the NFL?
There's also a 2-time Super Bowl champion in that running back room that's not getting talked about enough.
Mm-hmm.
Clyde
Edwards-Helaire. Yeah, he's another one. He had brought in late last season, showed some flashes, didn't have a bad season, so see what he can do with a full season in the black and gold.
And the Saints brought him back again. He was a free agent until New Orleans brought him back. The Saints obviously something in him, and you can never go wrong with the Louisiana-born.
Absolutely.
I think it also, in the end, goes down to pass blocking because,
Yes.
as we know, Kendre Miller has struggled with pass blocking, and Alvin Kamara has been great with pass blocking, so that's not an issue. But if Devin Neal, can show that, that's honestly such a factor in this that it might win him outright because of that. And Marcus Yarns also, same thing. This is just such an open battle, I feel like, which is very interesting.
It is going
Right,
into
that
any
speed.
4 players can get this.
Right.
Mhm.
Pretty sure Marcus Yarns ran like a 4.45, right? Something around those lines.
It was something like that. Here, I can look it up. But yeah, Yarns had an impressive time.
Yeah, if you see some of the plays he makes, it's like he doesn't. If I'm not mistaken, I might be forgetting, but I'm pretty sure his long speed is not the fastest when playing, but the burst of speed that he has is he just separates right away. It's insane, and he will be the second best pass catching running back on this roster. Like he had so many receiving yards, and he's just so lethal in that the Saints are going to love that. So that flexibility might also be a factor in this.
Yeah. Yarns had 4.45 speed. So, I mean, he can fly. Evan Neal, on the other hand, he doesn't have that top end speed. I think he ran 4.5, something around that. He won't outsprint anyone, but he's got burst. He can break tackles.
Elusiveness, man.
He can excel in that. Watch his game against Colorado last year. That is some of the best running back film you'll find out of any player.
And I feel like his strength is also something very different from this running back room.
Yeah.
Like
He doesn't use it enough, but he has it.
I'll do a little pushback because his name was mentioned once and then about never again. I watched a lot of Kendre Miller coming out. I really liked him and I loved the pick. He was a 3rd-round pick. I think I had the Saints picking him in the 4th round. I did my mocks and everything at the time. Kendre Miller, just like you said, injury prone, can't stay on the field, and it's been bad. I mean, when he looks good, he'll play on the field. He'll look good against the Chargers. He looked good, and then you're like, oh, finally, this is the Kendre Miller game, and there was actually some extra stuff. It's not always injuries. Sometimes I believe there was a problem with DA where DA was just refusing to put Kendre on the field, or if it's Pete Carmichael, I don't know who made that decision, but Kendre was healthy and he wasn't starting or he wasn't playing. But he's a great player. He has that contact balance that everybody's going to compare to Alvin Kamara because basically anyone who can stay up on their feet after getting touched is going to be compared to Alvin Kamara. But he's got great contact balance. He's quick. He's quick. Contact balance. He has the stuff. And if he can just stay healthy, I think he's the Saints running back too. I know they spent the pick on Devin Neal, but Kendre Miller, if healthy, He has the production and he can play to be the Saints running back too, but that's a big if. We haven't seen it yet, and I'm not sure if we are going to see it.
No, he has
Yeah,
so
It
much
was
time.
just
talent.
poorly
It's just he has to
managed.
put it together. He just has to put it together. And yeah, as you
Mhm.
said, poorly managed. I mean, I think with the DA thing, I'm fairly certain.
Yeah, that was.
I may be mistaken, but he was put onto the IR when he wasn't supposed to be put on the IR later in the
Right
season.
before he got fired.
Mhm. And it was a very weird situation. And giving him the benefit of the doubt when I brought up the blocking, because there was also just some like play issues. Like he wasn't understanding the play. If I'm not mistaken, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt because that could have been the coaching staff. If the coaching staff didn't have belief in him, or there just were coaches that were trying to help him and it was just a clash of heads, that could be totally different with this coaching staff, which is offensive based. So this could be definitely different where he's in a much better situation. The learning's better, everything is just better. And if that happens with hopefully better health, which is what is should be expected with new practice or new practice techniques and all that, he will be running back 2 probably. But if he
100%.
doesn't get those things together, I don't know.
I thought
Yeah, and
Miller.
Kellen
I thought he was gonna
Saints
have a
are a blank
huge season
slate.
last year. He
Moore
could
said
be
the Saints are a
executing
blank
fit him
slate,
well.
so this could be the time. This is his last chance. He's gotta put it together.
Make or break year.
All right, and for our final position battle, it'd be the one that I'm most excited to see. And we talked about it a little bit earlier because there could, and there probably will be more coming with it. Cornerback 2. Who's actually cornerback 2? Uh, really, you're fighting for who's your starting outside. So that's really the whole cornerback room. I'm just gonna kind of ignore the slot for now. Who's your 2 outside corners? And who's starting where? Kool-Aid McKinstry's obviously going to eventually find himself on one of those spots there. Is Alontae Taylor going to be your cornerback too? Is Alontae Taylor going to go in a slot for you? The Saints clearly see a need in cornerback. That's why they brought in Asante Samuel. That's why they tried real hard for Chavarius Ward earlier in the offseason. They see that it's a glaring need. And Quincy Riley, 5th-round pick, he's got a lot of, he showed a lot, and he can be that player, and he can see a lot of early play early in the season. But I think right now what you're looking at is Isaac Yiadom, who they brought in a 3-year deal, familiarity. I would say familiar with the organization, not this defensive staff, whole new defensive staff. But they brought him on a 3-year deal. It's only worth about $9 million, but it's significant that it's a 3-year deal in that way. I think it's going to be fun to see who comes out with it because the Saints secondary is very questionable outside of your veteran safeties. Your cornerback room is very questionable. You don't know what you got. You got young guys. You got Alontae Taylor, who used to be really good on the outside, and then he struggled in the slot, but stuck in the slot and got really good in the slot, and now he's struggling on the outside. They're giving him too many assignments. It's real rough for him. You need to stick and pick and choose where you want Alontae Taylor, where I believe he should be our slot corner. And then you keep Kool-Aid on the outside, and now who is getting that cornerback 2 position? Is it Yiadom? Is it Yiadom or
Yadam, I believe.
Yiadom? I know it was around. So Yiadom. Is it Rico Payton? Is Rico Payton? Everybody's a big fan of Rico Payton here. I mean, he looked great in the preseason. He earned some play in the season. Saints were blowing out a couple times, so he actually did some nice highlights. Or are they bringing another guy out? Is Asante Samuel coming in? The Saints obviously like him, and pending the bidding war that's eventually going to come with him, he might be the one that wins that job.
Yeah, and going off of 2 things you actually said, Isaac Yiadom actually spent time with Brandon Staley in San Francisco last season. Brandon Staley was on the Niners defensive staff. I can't remember exactly his title, but he did spend time over there. And Isaac Yiadom, he was great when he's filled in for Paulson Adebo a couple years back. Or it was Marshawn Lattimore, I believe, one of the 2. But yeah, he was great. He was really consistent out there. Actually was top in the league in PBUs at one point. And looking at Alontae Taylor last season, you're absolutely right. He needs to stick in the slot. Was leading the league in disruptive plays at one point until he ultimately was moved back to the outside where he really struggled. I just don't know if you can really, like you said, you're asking a lot of him to just keep moving back and forth. You're asking a lot for him to be moving outside in base sets and then inside in nickel sets. I just think you need to put him in one spot and then develop some outside DBs. And I really like Quincy Riley, like you said.
And I think the biggest issue right now is just the Saints are banking on Kool-Aid. And we don't know if Kool-Aid is going to reach that highs that everyone is believing he will be. Obviously, 2nd-round pick, a lot invested in that. But he was good last season, but he was a rookie cornerback. We're not going to have a Marshawn Lattimore situation here where they win defensive rookie of the year, and he was behind three other corners. So that's another question mark. But I do think that's cornerback one right there. Kool-Aid, you just put him there, that's fine. And as you said, cornerback two, that's very questionable because I think Alontae Taylor, you just stick him in the slot, put him in that star role like Jalen Ramsey was with the Rams, and see if he could do that. If he could do that, then he will not be moved. But Isaac Yiadom, I don't know if that you really want that as your second corner right now. And obviously, as we said with Asante Samuel Jr., I would like that addition just because it's such a question mark. I would not play Quincy Riley right away. I did not want them to play Kool-Aid McKinstry last year right away, just because throwing a corner back to the Wolves is very risky. It's very risky. So I think just sticking with the veteran with Isaac Yiadom, who's also on a great contract. It is a very cheap 3-year contract for a veteran player that you upgrade your cornerback room this year or next year will be an amazing fourth corner for you. So I think you stick with the veteran for now, but upgrades could happen. Or if just Quincy Riley shows so much, you put him out there.
Just so much uncertainty. That's the Saints cornerback room. They're very young. Isaac Yiadom, I guess, is the veteran in the room, and he doesn't have a ton of experience playing defense. He was special teams star for a long time. So I think bringing in Asante Samuel would be huge, just to give them another established player who has played multiple years in the league, who has shown that he can succeed. I think that'd be big.
Yeah, had a 3-interception game against the Jaguars in the playoffs a couple years back as well. So has seen the big stage.
All right. Well, now that we wrapped up position battles, and before we move on to our next segment, we're gonna have a little bit of trivia here. I know we all see the Instagram post, and it's pictures of teams' logos and their career path, and you try to guess. So we're gonna do that today. I have a former Saint. I have his career paths. We're gonna start off with just the teams, not the years. I know we're trying to be a little formal with how we respond. Just blurt out answers if you think you got it. Maybe a little discussions. But we're gonna try to do it quick. So without further ado, this player started his career with the Vikings. Not saying if he's drafted, undrafted. He started his career with the Vikings, moved to the Saints, moved to the Panthers, moved to the Broncos, Dolphins, and then Lions. Now, I will say, I started out with a easier pick for this first one, but I know naming all those teams is going to kind of, without years, is going to kind of throw us off a little bit.
Yeah. Said Vikings.
Can you say them again? Vikings,
Yeah,
Saints,
I'll say the
Panthers,
order.
Broncos.
Started career with the Vikings, Saints, Panthers. Oh, hold on. I see there's a mistake there. I'm sorry. Started career with the Vikings, Jets, Saints, Panthers, Broncos, Dolphins, Lions.
So it was Viking, Jets, who?
Yeah, it's Vikings, then Jets. Jets is a little.
No, who's the third one?
Us.
Saints are the third.
Is it Marcus May?
It is not Marcus May.
Okay, because I was about to say, I was like, it was a Jet first. I just wanted to make sure. Okay.
Yeah. Now, do we want years? Are we ready for the years yet, or? All right. So from 2014 to 2017, he was a Viking. I don't have the Jets listed here, but I believe the Jets was 2018 briefly, and then the Saints from 2018 to 2019.
Teddy Bridgewater.
It is Teddy Bridgewater. Yeah, it's Teddy Bridgewater. The ones that threw me off when I picked it off, I forgot Teddy Bridgewater was a Bronco. Completely forgot
he was a
Bronco.
Yeah.
He was a
I forgot
When
the
was he a
Jets, too.
Jet? Yeah, when was he a Jet? That's crazy.
He might
I do not
I
remember
don't
that
remember
at
the
all.
Jets.
I don't think he even finished the season on the Jets. I believe he was on the Jets for like training camp or something. That's why I don't even have him here, because when I first listed this out, it said I believe it was Jets 2018 and Saints 2018.
Yeah, I believe it was his first stop after his major injury, so it was like a big deal, and then he was either released or something like that, and then the Saints got him, and you know how that went. He was great.
I'm glad we were able to get it before I got the quarterback, because I feel like once I said quarterback in Saints 2018, 2019, this probably would have been the easiest one.
Mhm.
I'll say next one, I'm gonna do a little bit of a deeper pull. I will keep it a little recent. I think we're all a little young, right? So I'm gonna keep it a little recent, so we don't have to pull 1980s long snapper, right? But We could go with that. All right. So now heading into the next segment, we're gonna be picking our sleepers and favorite draft picks. Who's your sleeper for the 2025 season? And also, who is your favorite draft pick? Maybe these are both the same guy. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, so my sleeper is actually someone that you had mentioned earlier, Rico Payton. I think he has a legitimate shot at winning this outside cornerback job. He was great in the preseason last year. Like you said, had a really rough training camp. Week one against the Cardinals had 4 PBUs in the preseason, 2 tackles, and a 90.9 coverage grade, which was most among rookies. His 91.7 overall grade was actually second among all rookies in week one. He also added a sack in preseason week three. So maybe he can also pick up where Alontae Taylor left off rushing the passer last season. I don't know if you remember, Alontae Taylor had 4 sacks after week two. Yeah, he's definitely an intriguing guy. I could definitely see him earning this role. He stuck around. To be able to stick around coming from a D2 college, you must be doing something right. I have a lot of belief in Rico Payton. And for my favorite draft pick, I'm going to have to go with linebacker Danny Stutzman. I love that pick so much. He's just a stand-up character. In 2023, he gave 18 walk-ons at Oklahoma $50,000 of his NIL money. That's just outstanding. Looking at the football side, had a 9.62 relative athletic score, which ranked 123rd out of 3,182 linebackers from 1987 to 2025. Super athlete, ran a 4.52 40-yard dash at 6'3", 233 pounds. In 2024, he was actually named second-team AP All-American and first-team All-SEC, and was a finalist for the Butt Kiss Award for the nation's top linebacker. So he's a stud, led the team with 110 tackles, started 12 games, 8 tackles for loss, and a sack. And he's just a great teammate. There was a clip that was I found surfaced in Twitter the other day. Jackson Arnold, former quarterback for Oklahoma in 2023, had lost a big game. Could see him walking down with his head down. Danny Stutzman came up behind him. He lifted him, picked his head up, just lifting him up. That's a guy that you want on your team. I can definitely see him being a team captain sooner than later, and that's a guy that I really think can success Demario Davis in the future.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, you beat me to it. You picked Danny Stutzman before I could, but I'll agree. The Saints, from when I seen them in this draft, they really targeted guys who can lead, who can really speak up, and I think that's big in a rebuilding year. We'll get more into them later, but Danny Stutzman is that guy, and to me, he just seems like and you really barely got to the football part. I'll say that. You obviously brought up his things, but as Danny Stutzman may be a better guy than he is a football player, but he's one hell of a football player, and you can't get that from him. His game instincts, his game knowledge is perfect. I loved watching his tape because he knew what the other team was doing before I could process the quarterback. Whatever the quarterback was doing, I'm looking at the quarterback. Danny Stutzman's meeting him right there. Meeting the running back. And his game knowledge is elite. Perfect linebacker to add to this core, and I think would be a big piece going forwards.
And like you
And it's
said,
very
really good run defender, which was the Saints' biggest weakness last year, is they allowed the second most yards per carry in the league. So they definitely addressed run defense in this draft as well.
And it's going to be daunting to find your successor for Demario Davis, but if you want someone that could run through the gap and hit someone as hard as they could, that's Danny Stutzman, and that's kind of what that's Demario's best thing. He just finds a perfect gap, gets the quarterback, gets the running back, stops it. Might not be the greatest in pass defense, which that's the one bad part about Danny Stutzman's game, is that his pass defense is just not good. He doesn't really know how to do it. If he could get that, this is going to be possibly the best pick of the draft, just because that is a top tier linebacker. And this upgrades the future of the linebacker core. A lot of uncertainty with that, with age Demario Davis, Pete Werner's play not being the greatest at times, and then Jalen Ford being injured last season. There's a lot of question marks there. So getting Danny Stutzman in, being a captain very quickly, it's a great pick.
All right. And now that we're going to Caleb, what was your favorite? Who's your sleeper, and then who is your favorite draft pick?
Yeah, my sleeper is Bub Means. It's kind of situational, but also he showed out when he played last season. Obviously, it was for little time because of an injury, which is what we could say with a lot of players. But you're a rookie. I kind of give them a little leeway with injuries. I think he complements the games of all the wide receivers that we currently have. Chris Olave, smaller, speedier, route runner. Rashid Shaheed, smaller, fast. Brandon Cooks, smaller, fast. Bub Means can be a contested catch threat, which is what we need. And I think that so he complements the games really well. And I also just think that he's really good for a young quarterback. We already saw last season with Spencer Rattler. They created chemistry right away, so fast. Obviously, that could be or because they were in the same draft class, possibly. But I think and we already saw practice footage with Bub Means and Tyler Shuck. So I think he's really good at creating chemistry with a young quarterback right away, where that could kind of be a safety blanket and tight end. Tight end's usually the safety blanket, but having a wide receiver like that, like with Keenan Allen and Caleb Williams last year, having that is amazing. So that would be my sleeper. My top pick has to be Quincy Riley. We kind of talked about him before, but I just think for value, getting Quincy Riley at where they did was amazing. I actually had them in the Saints in my last mock draft, trade up for Quincy Riley from that pick that they used on Riley. I think with the need at corner, which we talked about, with how good he was in 2023, and he's played this past year injured and still was good on at both zone and man coverage. I just think it was the perfect pick. Obviously, situationally, this could get not great just because if as I said before, if he's thrown to the Wolves and he is just CB2 right away, that could be a little scary. But I think with a perfect situation where he can just sit and learn for a year, possibly come in randomly in games, I think it's perfect pick for that.
Love the Quincy Riley pick. At the Senior Bowls, when he really started to shine, you know how much the Saints love their Senior Bowl players, and he put on a show.
Yeah, and I kind of want to go back to the Bub Means thing because I think it's very. So the Saints wanted a receiver. They said they wanted a receiver in the draft. They didn't get a receiver in the draft. And we haven't seen much. They signed Brandon Cooks. You're not signing Brandon Cooks to stop your contested catch, right? So I think it's very telling that they haven't gone after any big receivers or just any receivers really. You're not bringing in too many receivers. I think it's very telling that what they see in Bub Means. Bub Means was he a 6th round pick? I'm sorry, was
I believe so.
Yeah, he was 6th.
I think so.
But like you said, he created chemistry right away with Spencer Rattler, and he's immediate. First time we seen Tyler Shuck throw to any Saints receiver, it was to Bub Means. I think the Saints see a lot in Bub Means, and clearly they're not trying to target that position as much as we all think they should. I mean, I feel like there's been talk all offseason. When are the Saints going to bring a receiver in? They signed Brandon Cooks, and everybody's kind of scratching their heads like, all right, but we know that's not going to stop you from bringing on another receiver, but they haven't. They haven't done it yet. I don't know what we're waiting for. The Keenan Allen connection's there. Brandon Staley, former head coach. Kellen Moore worked with Keenan Allen. There's a connection there, and I feel like you could get him for a pretty decent price. You have the money, and it's not a guy that it seems like they're targeting right now. Bub Means may have come in for a big season. The Saints need somebody that could catch the ball over the middle of the field. Rashid Shaheed, you've seen he's improved as a route runner, but you know what his game is. Chris Olave, he's a route runner, but we've seen what happens when he goes into middle field too much. You need somebody who can safely catch that ball in the middle of the field. I think Bub Means is that. He was getting comparisons to Deebo Samuel. Now, I think that's a little off for me, but that type of receiver there, he can catch the ball in the middle field, and he could do plenty of other things.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
also,
I
they
think
did sign
Donovan
Donovan Peoples-Jones.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I think Donovan Peoples-Jones is flying under the radar. Didn't play in 2024, was dealing with some personal issues. After being traded to 2023 to the Lions, his career kind of fell off a little bit, so he's looking to revitalize that in New Orleans. He looks hungry. In 2022, he had over 800 receiving yards for Cleveland, and also had 16 contested catches in 2021 with a 69.6 contested catch rate, 37.9 contested catch rate in 2022 as well with 11 contested catches. So that guy can definitely be your over the middle guy. He's just 26 years old, 6'2", 204. I really like that signing.
Yeah, and
I think that's a fun competition that we didn't talk about. Just we didn't get to wide receiver for that, but Bub Means going against Donovan Peoples-Jones. They could be kind of that similar battle where they both bring the same thing to the offense. And although I do think both will be on the roster, that's just going to be very interesting to watch.
And when I wrote about Donovan Peoples-Jones when the news came out, I wrote and I made it clear because that's how I think. I don't think Donovan Peoples-Jones stops you from still going out and getting another wide receiver. You know, again, once you get a guy on a real value, now like I said before, though, it doesn't seem like the Saints are really worried about that. We knew with cornerback when they targeted Javarius Ward, they were going to go try to find another cornerback. They got one in the draft, and then they're also interested in Sante Samuel. There's clear tellings that they think this is something that they need to add on to. With wide receiver, again, you added Brandon Cooks. We all knew that was like, okay, that's a cool move, I guess. That's a move. They wanted one in the draft, but they didn't end up seeing the value there. And then they went out and got Donovan People-Jones. The Saints might be done with adding wide receiver. I don't see the urgency there to now go get Keenan Allen, and that's why I think Bub Means and Donovan People-Jones is that competition that you were bringing up.
Right.
Another receiver I like.
MVS type of signing.
Mason Tipton isn't being talked about enough too. He was on their active roster for basically the whole year, but he never really got a lot of moments. So I think he could really have a big sophomore year if he's given the opportunity.
Speaking of players that got thrown to the wolves,
Yes.
he should not have been.
Yale, right?
Yeah, he's like, and I know the Mason Tipton train really fell off after the Chiefs game because of the one drop, if I'm not mistaken. But he showed a lot during training camp. People forget that he was really showing out during training camp, and then there's some injuries. But I mean, all the wide receivers got injured, but there is still something there. Now, does he really show up and make the roster with some of these other wide receivers? I'm not sure. But also, I'm a little bit of a draft sicko and have been looking at next year's draft class. And if the Saints do decide to punt a little bit and go with wide receiver there are some great wide receivers throughout that draft. And if the Saints do have more of a middle round pick, or even they just focus on it with an early second round, there are some great contested catch wide receivers available.
All right. And now Drew. Drew has actually a very interesting pair here. So why don't you tell us who your sleeper and favorite draft pick is?
My sleeper, I'm going Nephi Sewell. This could honestly be any of the linebackers on the roster. Isaiah Stahlberg, Jalen Ford, Danny Stutzman, DeMarco Jackson. Any one of them could, because they just need someone to step up behind the big two. I feel like I'm going to go Nephi Sewell because he was having a pretty good 2023 year for him. He finally got an opportunity on defense, and he's playing well before tearing his ACL in Week 17. Missed the majority of last year, came back, played 7 games last year, but only one of them he got defensive snaps. I still think he was rehabbing, just not fully there. I think if given the opportunity, he could have a big year. Not a lot of people are expecting it.
And then
my favorite draft pick, I'm gonna go Jonas Sanker. I feel like that pick's not being picked about or talked about enough because it was the same round or same day as Tyler Shuck. But he is a versatile safety. I mean, he had 358 snaps in the box, 282 as a free safety, 139 as a slot corner, 17 on the defensive line. He can play anywhere on the field for Brandon Staley. Brandon Staley's made it clear that he wants to emphasize versatility. He wants guys that can play a variety of positions, and I think that guy is Jonas Sanker.
Yeah, Ravens' second-round pick edge rusher Mike Green actually labeled Sanker the most underrated player in the draft.
I
Not know that.
I didn't.
Yeah, I did not see that.
I didn't see that either, no.
That's crazy. Yeah, Sanker is my favorite style of player. That's some linebacker, safety. Someone who can seamlessly play those positions right there. He's 6 foot, I think 208, 208, something.
6 foot 206.
6 foot 206 is good, close enough guess. Yeah, I mean he's a big guy, and when you watch highlights, you see how big of a guy he is when he starts slamming these guys. Pause. But no, he's really he starts like he's a hitter, man. He's a hitter, absolutely rocks dudes, and that's my favorite form of football to watch. Head down and go make a big hit, because it's not talked about enough how big of a big hit is a momentum for defense. And I genuinely think you need a hard hitter that could really rally your defense up. Not Poston Adipo. Alontae Taylor, with his tackling problems, has had some pretty big ones, but the Saints secondary doesn't have that swag anymore. You really have gotten rid of all those guys that do. I think Jonas Sanker could bring that back.
He loves going against the run game more than willing contributor.
Who was the safety last year?
Oh no, he got cut. He was 2 years
from
ago.
the Lions.
Will Harris.
He was on
Will Harris.
This
he was
year, Will Harris.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Saints safety room is a lot better than I think everyone on this call or any fan thought it was going to be before free agency. Justin Reed, Tyrann Mathieu, and now Jonas Sanker. And I'm going to say Jordan Howden, but we really don't know what Jordan Howden's going to bring anymore. And it's going to be very interesting when the 53-man roster cuts happen, because if I'm not mistaken, I think they had 4 safeties on the roster last year with JT Gray included. So does Jordan Howden get cut? Does JT Gray get cut? Because Jonas Sanker brings that special teams defense. It's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, I could
There's
see Jordan
53
Howden being
cuts are
that
gonna be
Jonathan
wild.
Abel role.
All right, but is that does anybody else want to say anything else on his Sanker or Sewell?
I really like Nephi Sewell. He's definitely one of the players that I've last season I was really intrigued to see come back from that injury. Has always stand out in training camp and practice. He's just a high energy, high motor guy. Always looking for the ball. He's one of those players that even if he's fighting adversity, you always know he's going to overcome it. The whole family kind of is just like his brother Penei Sewell. Just a football family. He's a really intriguing guy in the linebacker room.
Nothing about the linebacker room is I feel like they have to be confident in someone because they cut Anthony Orji, which came as
Right.
a kind of a surprise to a lot of people because he played pretty well when given the opportunity. So they
For a
must
fourth
feel
quarterback,
confidently. I don't
well.
know if it's about Jalen Ford or Nephi Sewell or whoever it is, but they got to feel someone can come in and take that big step.
All right, and for our final sleeper position battles, it would be me. And I just wanted to play devil's advocate. It's my whole thing here on my sleeper here. My sleeper is Trevor Penning. He started all 17 games last season after struggling as a rookie. Not playing as a rookie. He didn't get play time as a rookie. Came on as a sophomore and was benched. I believe it was 5 weeks, possibly 6 weeks after, and didn't see much play after that. I mean, the Saints were running jumbo packages, 6 offensive linemen, and somehow Trevor Penning was still getting beat. It was bad. Trevor Penning gets another opportunity on his 3rd year, and struggles were there, but it was a little bit messed with Eric McCoy. Eric McCoy goes down, and then it starts leaking through again. And you see the Trevor Penning struggles, and the problem is you don't have anyone to replace Trevor Penning. Trevor Penning was the best option, despite how much he struggled there. But then he quietly, just nothing. You didn't hear his name. And that's a really good thing as an offensive tackle is you stopped hearing Trevor Penning's name. He had a few highlights of running guys over, and you just wouldn't hear his name. And he played all 17 games, and I think with the way the Saints are running the offensive line, we talked about it a little bit earlier, there's a lot of talent. There's a lot of draft capital invested in it, especially in Trevor Penning here, who technically it was 2 first rounds, not really, with the whole Chris Olave. So, but you could say it was 2 first rounders to go ahead and get Trevor Penning there. And with the way it works, I'm going to play devil's advocate, and I think Trevor Penning can hold his right tackle spot. And now you're discussing, because I don't think Trevor Penning can play on the inside. I don't think he can at all. If he's going to play, he's going to be a tackle somewhere. And the discussion now is who goes on the inside. Is it Kelvin Banks? Is it Fuaga? And so I'm going to go ahead and just play the devil's advocate. I like Trevor Penning this season at the Saints right tackle, and I like them figuring out and where they should put Kelvin Banks. Now, moving on to Kelvin Banks, my favorite draft pick was Kelvin Banks. Specifically for the philosophy, I've watched a lot of Eagles games because I really dislike the Eagles, so I pay a lot of attention to them, of course. They build from the inside out. They draft very disciplined. I know you've seen the Jalen Ragers before draft picks, where it's like, what are the Eagles doing? They pick the guy that's falling, and they build from the trenches. I love the way the Eagles draft, and they have built from the trenches, and look at their defensive line, look at their offensive line, and I love that Kellen Moore came over here and he did the same thing. Again, a lot of draft capital going into building this offensive line, and I haven't even gotten to the player that Kelvin Banks is. 3 years at Texas, he started in all 3 seasons, and he earned rewards. He can play, he has the flexibility to play, and he did a left tackle for 3 years. So are you going to now put Fuaga in at left guard, where people thought he would switch to guard in college? I think the pick gives you a lot of options with what you could do. They signed Dylan Rayduns, who also gives you more options. I think I like the pick on the sole purpose of now you have a lot of flexibility. Offensive line is really your biggest problem on offense, and you need to protect your rookie quarterback or your young quarterback, at least in this case. And I love the way the Saints went and got Kelvin Banks, and he's a great player, and they can plug him and where they think he'll work, and the offensive line should go smoothly. I think this is all pending Trevor Penning. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm
And I
excited for
think with the
Penning, honestly. Saints just need to find a way to get their 5 best players on the offensive line on the field. Hopefully that's Penning. You spent a lot on him. That's to be seen. I do feel like he had an underrated 2024. So see if he develops anymore, what he can do in 2025.
and the best
I just
thing you could
like
see
Kelvin
is
Banks.
improvement. The best thing you
Good.
could see is improvement from him, and that's exactly what you saw last season. It's just, are we going to get more improvement? Because if Penning doesn't improve from last season, I think Banks immediately contests his spot. And going to the Kelvin Banks pick itself, a lot of people were upset that the Saints went with offensive line again because it's another trenches pick, which that argument, I get that with the offensive line, but with edge rusher, people say it's the quarterback of defense. It's the most important position of defense just because if you get a guy that can get 15 sacks, that's going to change everything. So I don't really get that argument, but I understand the offensive line. Like, oh, we just went to Taliasafaga last season. Why are the Saints picking another one? Well, as we just saw with the Eagles, having an offensive line is, besides quarterback, is one of the most important things in the league. And if with all the uncertainty that the Saints had last season, they just need to get that offensive line fixed. So I think picking Banks, as you said, was the perfect pick. Now, if Banks was gone and they went with another tackle, that would have been a little worrying. But and in this crazy draft, where the draft class wasn't the greatest, a lot of the players were kind of rated the same. I don't mind them going with Banks at all.
Yeah, and I think the Banks pick kind of solidifies how the coaching staff feels about Trevor Penning, especially since they recently declined his 5th-year option as well. I feel like that experiment is nearing its end. This is kind of his last shot as well, along with Kendre Miller. I'm intrigued to see if he does put up a fight in training camp because, look, if he does, he's got a good shot at winning that job. He's a great run blocker. The Saints are putting an emphasis on that. You saw how much Philly put an emphasis on that last year in Kellen Moore's offense. The Saints also brought over TJ Pagnetti from the Eagles as well, so their run game should look a lot better.
And I wanted to say, what Caleb brought it up, and I wrote it down. I forgot to say why I like the Kelvin Banks pick so much is, yeah, they declined to pick up Trevor Penning's 5th-year option here. So Kelvin Banks is also possibly your right tackle of the future. So the way I have it is Trevor Penning could end up actually being pretty solid, pretty good, and earn another contract with the Saints. Where now you have Trevor Penning, and now you have a problem if you have too many good players. You have too many guys that you're trying to put in line. They're all talented, and that's why I think this combination of Kelvin Banks and Trevor Penning's like Trevor Penning's not your sleeper. He's not good this season. You have your replacement. You drafted your replacement, and you still have a very talented offensive line. I think right now you have a lot of talent in your offensive line that you're trying to find a way to fit. Obviously, is the consistency here? We don't know. I know the biggest question marks here is can Cesar Ruiz really hold his own? That's been a question recently. Your left guard, Dylan Raduns, you don't know how good he's actually going to be. Like we said, he struggled in Tennessee, but there's reasons for that. So I think the Saints building in the trenches, specifically in the offensive line, has been very disciplined. I know a lot of people don't like it, and the Trevor Penning was a trade-up, so how disciplined is it actually? But building in the trenches, especially offensive line, is a disciplined way to build your offense, and I love that Trevor Penning can either be your right tackle of the future, or you have the right tackle of your future already on the roster.
I think my biggest worry, and it goes back to what I was kind of talking about with the position battles, if the Saints play Kelvin Banks at left guard, he's just amazing, right? That's great. But let's say they want to keep him at left guard, and then going into next draft season, they want to draft a tackle with one of their top picks. That's where I'm like, okay, or you could just sign, you have a little money next year, you sign a guard that's an actual starting guard, and now the offensive line's good. Or you could go in and draft another tackle where Kelvin Banks can just be a tackle. I don't want that to happen, even though I know it's weird because I just said that it's important to invest in offensive line in the first round. But I think this is going to be the first time where they don't need to. And if they do, it's a little bit questionable.
I have a crazy idea for the Saints. There's these things called guards that you can draft. You don't have to draft a center or a tackle to move them there.
Man, they
There's
drafted
pretty good guards.
Alontae Taylor in the slot. They like moving these guys around and seeing, just throwing them out there, seeing what they could do. I mean, it's why they go after
Yeah.
these high RAS score guys as one. These really
Right.
athletic guys who technically can plug and play, but just like you said, maybe let's just stick to guys that have actually been doing this thing instead of moving them around and playing.
Right.
Quarterback Taysom Hill, now he's a running back. Wide receiver Jawan Johnson, now he's a tight end.
And
They just
It's
they move their players.
so
They love doing it way too much.
you guys remember
Zach
Kirk
Bond,
Merritt
edge
was the
rusher.
wide receiver.
Wait till you see Tyler Shuck running at running back for us, man. It's gonna be one tight end actually.
That's all our issues.
But speaking of Tyler Shuck, how we want to close this out today? I'm just gonna ask you guys. It's gonna be the straight up question. Nick, who should start for the Saints in 2025?
Tyler Shuck should start for the Saints in 2025. You don't draft a guy that'll be 26 when the season starts to let bask on the bench for another year. He's probably the most ready rookie quarterback for this situation that you'll find. 7 years of college experience, has gone through 3 major injuries, has overcome adversity, has played in pro-style offenses. I think you give him a shot. Look, I love Spencer Rattler. I think he handled the offseason well. I think he handled last season well. Look, he went 0 for 6 in those 6 games, but I don't think you can ask any fifth-round pick quarterback to handle that well. I think Spencer does have a shot at this quarterback battle. I don't think it's going to be a fair battle, obviously, because it's this quarterback, this coaching staff's quarterback that they selected in Tyler Shuck. But if Rattler puts up a fight, I can see him definitely winning it. He actually was spending time with Patrick Mahomes this weekend, so hopefully some of that rubbed off on him.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. I think picking Shuck at 40 means something. At the minimum, it means something. He's the 3rd quarterback off the board, by the way. So that, again, means something.
Second highest quarterback drafted in franchise history as well, since Archie Manning in 1971 in the first round.
All right, let's hear it, Caleb. Who do you got started in 2025?
It has to be Tyler Shuck. I mean, as a lot of the points Nick said, I'm going to reiterate. Like, this coaching staff chose him. Spencer Rattler was chosen by the last coaching staff. Spencer Rattler is a 5th-round pick. Tyler Shuck's a 2nd-round pick. Now, obviously, this all goes down to training camp, that battle, what they show. And I think it's worrying if Tyler Shuck doesn't start, because this shouldn't be a 2. You need to get an answer after this season, because I know a lot of people don't like to hear when people say, "Oh, next year's quarterback class is going to be better. Oh, next year's quarterback class is going to be way better than the last one." But next year's quarterback class is actually going to be better. This was not a good quarterback class. If Drew Aller went to the draft this year, he would have been the first pick in the draft. And he has to go to the draft next year. There is more talent there already. So the Saints need to get their answer right away. It's not even about who I think is going to play better or who I think needs or who I think can really bring more to the team right now with the coaching staff, whatever. They need to get an answer for next year's draft, because if they need to get quarterback, they need to get quarterback. And that's the same thing for 2027. Let's say Tyler Shuck plays decent. They think it looks fine, but enough to build off of. Bring him into next season. And 2027 class is also a great quarterback class. So they just need to get that answer right away. I think it's more about the future of this team rather than the current state of this team.
100%. And all right, Drew, who do you have starting in 2025?
I'm going Tyler Shuck as well. I couldn't agree more with what especially Caleb laid out. You need to know what Shuck is. The next year's quarterback class is so elite. You have Lenora Sellers, you have Drew Aller, you have Cade Klubnik, you have a ton of options. You need to know if Shuck is going to be your guy or if you need to wait for future years. It's kind of what the Falcons did with Desmond Ridder. They only played him like 3 years his rookie season or his second season. And that really put them back because they passed up on quarterbacks and put all their trust in Ridder, which, I mean, that didn't work out for them at all. Lucky for the Saints, but I think they just need to know what Shuck is. Rattler, he's got a ton of potential. I think he'll be a great backup, and if Shuck does get injured again, he'll be a very viable option. But I just think Tyler Shuck's got to be the week 1 starter.
All right, yeah, 100%. And we all know Jake Hayner's actually supposed to be the starter here. You know, but we don't bring up Jake Hayner. And obviously, we know he's not going to be the starter. He's not going to win. We could be wrong, but this is a 2-man battle with Jake Hayner on the inside included. Spencer Rattler, like we all said, I think one that's really underrated about his game that we do know about is Spencer Rattler is a leader. And this is more off the ball, but he's a leader. We've seen him lead the team. He's invested himself in the city. He's a great guy, which is big character development from what we saw in high school. Obviously, high school kids dumb, make mistakes, but he's actually grown into a big leader. He was out here during the Super Bowl, and he emphasizes New Orleans. But I'm going to go Tyler Shuck. I mean, everything you guys said is true, but just go with the intangibles. He's 6'5". He ran a 4.5. He's athletic, strong arm. He has the tools. His comparison in the build and everything, not play style, but his comparison is Josh Allen. He has the tools to be great, and I love the angle that, now I'm not going to do it, but I'm going to do it, right? Sean Payton came here and got his quarterback. It was a little different to free agency. I love when an offensive minded coach goes out and gets his quarterback. And we invested quite a bit. Pick 40 was way more than I thought Tyler Shuck was going to be drafted. I heard the draft rise. I didn't believe it. I believe I typed in the group chat and I said this is smoke. This is the same Will Levis, not Will Levis, but the Malik Willis. When Malik Willis was number 1 overall and he went in the 3rd round, I believe. I believed it was that type of rise and it wasn't real. But you did invest a lot in him, and I think to start the season, at least, you need to see what you have out of Tyler Shuck. I think there's going to be enough games, and there may be a point in the season where they pivot, go from Tyler Shuck or whoever their first quarterback is to the other. I think we might see both quarterbacks throughout the season. I'm going to love this preseason battle. Preseason has suddenly become way more interesting. These position battles that we talked about throughout the whole thing, we're going to get to see all of those. All of these are valuable position battles that we're going to see in the preseason, but I think everybody's going to have their eye out on what number 6 and number 2 do.
Yeah, and like you
In my
mentioned,
mind, there are two battles.
before the Senior Bowl, he was at consensus 5th-round pick. The Saints really liked what they saw on him, and like it's obvious that not every team views players the same way. They all have their boards falling differently. One team could have had him as a 1st-rounder. One team could have had him as a 6th-rounder. The Saints obviously were really high on him, and they went and watched him work out. He had a great meeting with the team, and it fell into place. But I think Jake Haener has his own battle going on now after the Saints have signed Hunter Deckers. Hunter Deckers out of Iowa Western spent some time at Iowa State before dealing with a gambling scandal, an underage gambling scandal. He's admitted that he regrets it. He's moved on. He's grown, but he put up a school record of 3,806 passing yards and 32 touchdowns at Iowa Western with a 64.1% completion percentage. He's a baller. He's a lefty just like Kellen Moore. Kellen Moore must have really liked what he's seen in him to cut Anthony Orgy for him, because Orgy was a guy that I was really high on since he's arrived in New Orleans. I wouldn't say that would have been the guy that I would have got rid of for a 4th quarterback, but it happened, and look, I like Hunter Decker, so we'll see what happens there. I think he's going to give Jake Haener a run for his money for that 3rd quarterback spot.
No matter what quarter it is or who's playing quarterback in the preseason, someone's job's going to be on the line. There's going to be something to watch. You got to battle for quarterback 1. You got to battle for quarterback 3. Everyone's got a chance to compete. It's going to be a good time to watch.
And going back to what Nick said about how certain teams had Shuck ranked differently, I think throughout, after it was revealed that if the Saints didn't take Shuck, the Rams were taking Shuck. They love Shuck. So Sean McVay likes Shuck. And it came out that Sean Payton really liked Tyler Shuck. Those are some pretty good offensive minds liking this quarterback. I kind of give Kellen Moore the benefit of the doubt with that. I loved Tyler Shuck around Senior Bowl. I was like, okay, 4th-round pick, earliest 3rd round. I'm okay with it. He's older, but some of the throws Tyler Shuck can make, just watch. It's on YouTube. Watch the full Notre Dame Louisville game. It is he has a bad fumble, but he ran 70 yards and then got caught behind. And as we know, the Saints coaching staff, like with the Eagles coaching staff, because a lot of them are on the Saints, work on fumbles. So that won't be an issue. But that game is amazing. It's so fun to watch. He can make crazy throws and also has amazing accuracy on some deep balls that you'll never see. His wide receiver dropped the ball so many times. Literally dropped the ball. He was not put in a good situation, and the running backs weren't great. It was just not a great situation. So to have all those skills, yeah, the age is an issue. And a lot of people say with the age, there's not a lot of development. He didn't play a lot of games in college. with the injuries, he was out a lot of the time, and the injuries aren't soft tissue injuries like with what Michael Penix had when he tore his ACL twice, or I'm pretty sure twice. These were broken bones that if a doctor looks at it and said, "Oh no, they're all healed, they're good," these aren't supposed to be recurring injuries. So he hasn't had a lot of games. He has the development. He was a highly rated prospect. He showed talent throughout college and had a lot of different schemes, which this scouting staff might really like because that's something that was a positive with Spencer Rattler. I think he's just put into this perfect situation where he can go out, and I'm not going to say he's going to really succeed because that's just too much pressure. He doesn't have a lot of pressure on him, but his second round pick still has some pressure. And I think he's put into a perfect scenario where he can still grow, and Tyler Shuck will grow throughout the season, but he's going to show enough for this coaching staff to want to keep him. It's just, will the ugly parts be ugly, and will they happen? Because they can get ugly. They could get bad. And it's all with pressure, which is going back to why Kelvin Banks was such a good pick.
Speaking more on the
Realistically,
pressure
they will
aspect,
happen.
I feel like every quarterback in this year's class that got drafted over Shedeur Sanders is going to have a ton more pressure by the national media. So, but I think Tyler Shuck, he can handle the pressure. Just going to be amplified kind of because Shedeur Sanders is such a big name and everyone passed on him. I feel like if he doesn't succeed, he's going to get a lot of backlash. But I feel like he's in a spot. He's got the maturity. He's got the ability. I think he'll surpass the pressure and all expectations.
And realistically, it's you have to expect some mistakes. I mean, he's a rookie. He didn't have a very good supporting cast, like Caleb said. It's going to take some time, but like you said, or like I mentioned earlier, I believe he's suited for this situation more than many other rookie quarterbacks would be. So I'm intrigued to see how it's going to play out.
Yep, and we're gonna wrap it up here because we are running out of time. I just kind of want to touch one more thing on what Nick said, where I'm not gonna just pin it down on just Jake Hayner, but Jake Hayner is fighting for a spot here. The Saints are, I mean, I think there's a high chance the Saints have to bring in a veteran quarterback, some type of way. The Saints are gonna have to bring a veteran here. All four of the quarterbacks on the roster right now won't be on the roster come cut down day. They need a veteran quarterback there. You have a mid-game injury. I don't know if you're replacing a rookie with a second-year player or a second-year player with a rookie. You need a veteran presence in that room. So the quarterback choice is its own battle, and there's another battle here on how the roster is actually going to flesh out and who's actually going to be here. So I think Deckers, Hayner, who are the two that come to me, are both really fighting for a spot. I think the Saints could run four quarterbacks. It's very doable, especially with emergency quarterback now. And now it's kind of who wins the starting spot. Okay, you have your QB2. Now who's the veteran taking over for?
Well, I kind of think the Saints have two options in the building already. The Saints have three former quarterbacks on their coaching staff: Kellen Moore, Doug Nussmeier, and Scott Tolzien. And Taysom Hill spent a lot of time in that quarterback room, so they have a lot of guys who know how it's supposed to play out, how the process goes, how to mentor these guys. I think they could feel comfortable with what they've got in the building.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up. I appreciate everybody listening. Make sure you guys tune into the Dome Discussions podcast every Monday, every Thursday. Sorry for any mistakes. Episode 1, we're fleshing it all out. But again, I appreciate everybody tuning in. Y'all have a good one.